Next, we're going to be covering a story about climate change. I feel like every day could be covered a story on climate change, but we're going to be talking about some insane, extreme weather that's been going on here in our country and in other parts of the world. So, first off, is that more evacuations are ordered after California wildfire jumps the highway. A fire in Lake Tahoe, California area jumped a highway and forced additional evacuations and the cancellation of an intensive bike race. The Tamarack Fire, just south of Lake Tahoe, was 0% contained as of Sunday afternoon, according to the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest. Officials from the National Forest said that 517 personnel were working to contain the fire. The fire is now covering 18,000 acres. It's just the latest fire to devastate the West in what has increasingly been seen as a year-long issue linked to the changing climate. The wildfire has grown steadily since lightning sparked it on July 4th, leading officials to also close a portion of the Pacific Crest Trail between California State Route 88 and California State Route 4 on Sunday. Officials noted that some thunderstorms that were predicted for Sunday afternoon could cause erratic winds near the wildfire, forced by gusty winds, critically dry fuels, and low relative humidity. The Tamarack Fire exhibited rapid rates of spread and an increase in fire behavior throughout the day. According to the Associated Press, the fire was headed toward Alpine County Airport after jumping a highway. Officials say that 3 structures have already been destroyed by the fire, and that the intensive bike event had been canceled. It doesn't seem like anyone had been injured, but the the seriousness of climate change this year it has been devastating, and last year as well for California and its citizens. Just the amount of damage that's been caused by these fires, and they are all linked to climate change because of the the low humidity, because of the more rapid thunderstorms, because of just the heat, the dryness. And I can say, even in where I live, it's been extremely hot this year. The humidity has been off the charts, and it's been pushing into the hundreds, and even different parts of the country have been, this the hottest year on record. There was temperatures almost with humidity going into 130s. Like this, it's getting to be a really, really bad problem. Now, the good news is that we may finally be starting to see some change from the United States. So as this says, with disasters mounting by the day, the U.S. may finally enact real climate policy. It's a summer of cascading disasters in the United States. Downpours have made rivers of major metropolises, transit lines. The flooding in New York, of course. Coastal condo collapsed. Flames have engulfed vast swaths of land that in Cali, we were just talking about that, and triple-digit heat from places out west and the southwest. But for the first time in over a decade, the U.S. government may actually do something about emissions. This week, the Biden administration and its allies in Congress announced plans to pack the federal budget with resources and rules that could jolt a country long paralyzed by corporate obstruction and science denial and finally confronting an unprecedented crisis. Democrats plan to use their slim majorities in Congress to pass a $3.5 trillion spending package that includes mandates to cut 80% of plant heating pollution from the electricity sector by 2030, fund a new green job corps, and make it easier for drivers to swap gas guzzlers for electric vehicles. And now the problem is, in this situation, is where we stand between the two sides of the Democratic Party, the corporate Democrats and the progressive Democrats. Now, there are two sides to this. The corporate Democrat side, we have Joe Manchin, of course, directing $95 billion to carbon capture and storage technology in the fossil fuel plants on Wednesday. So that's keeping the fossil fuel industry in money, in power, which he would obviously want to do because he's paid very well by him. And again, buy efficient new appliances aimed at slashing 37% of U.S. emissions that stem from household energy use, which is just you're at that point you're not really doing anything. You're just taking off a thin layer, and that's the problem. Is just not enough with these moderate Democrats. It's just not enough. Um, Nuclear plants, but on the progressive side, we have the Thrive Act, a $10 trillion generational Green New Deal plan, infrastructure plan, which will probably never pass. A 1 trillion federal aid for cities and towns that are seeking to slash emissions on their own. Again, something that probably will never happen. But that one's at least a little bit more likely. And then a $1.4 trillion package for a Green New Deal for public schools. And the problem with these are that a lot of our politicians are bought and paid for by the oil industry, by big oil, by the fossil fuel industry, by the automation industry. Like the problem, that's the real problem. It's money. And at the end of the day, I don't understand, because this isn't a partisan issue. This isn't an American issue. This is a world issue. Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. We all have to live here. Like that's one thing I just don't understand. We all have to live here. We should not be fighting about this. This should not be a debate. No, this should no longer be a debate. We should be getting down to business, because it might already be too late. It might already be too late. I choose to have hope, but it needs to be done yesterday. Let's get this done. And as proof, that we, it's as proof that there is an issue, and that it's a universal issue, and it's a world issue, and that our problem always seems to be with money, is that we face facing ferocious blowback from industries and our allies in Congress. The federal policymakers could only come up with $2.4 trillion in direct net revenue to offset the program, and managed to muster another $1.1 trillion through accounting techniques with the budget. But nobody wants to hear about that the reason you couldn't save the earth was because you didn't want to add to the deficit. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody cares about that. It's too late for that. Remember what we were talking about? $2 trillion on Afghanistan. And even listen to this. Despite far stricter budget constraints due to its multinational euro currency, the European Union this week took some even more aggressive climate steps, proposing a dozen bills that would, among other things, ban diesel and gas-powered cars by 2035 and levy new taxes on heating gas. So, they don't even have as much money as we do, and they're stepping up their game. What's our excuse? What's our excuse? Now, why is Europe getting, really pushing their climate change? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because the death toll, right, from the Hill, death toll climbs to over 180 in European flooding. The death toll in Germany and other areas of Europe due to severe flooding climbed to more than 180 on Sunday. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel suggesting the intensity of the flooding had something to do with climate change. You think? Thank you, Captain Obvious. But speaking in a nearby town during a press conference, she said, "We must get faster in the battle against climate change. One flood isn't the example of climate change, but if we look at the last events of recent years, decades, then we are simply more frequent than they were previously, so we must make a great effort." Although scientists are hesitant to say whether the flooding was caused by climate change, they believe climate change has made extreme weather conditions worse. So it'll take weeks to determine exactly what the report is. So at least 157 people have been killed by the flooding in Germany, along with at least 31 people in Belgium. It's shocking. This is a quote from Merkel. It is shocking. I would almost say that the German language barely has words for the devastation that has been wreaked, except for maybe a Holocaust. But no, this is a serious problem. It's a serious issue, and they're taking a stand, and they're getting it together for their people, and our country needs to do the same. They need to do more. It needs to be more.